Greetings, brothers. Welcome. Today we're looking at Assassins. We're going to find out which one's best, how it complements your Blood Angels army, so stick around. Welcome to the weekly tactics video. Today we're going to talk about Assassins. We're going to go from everything from stats to stratagems to tactics, and if you get some value out of today's video, please hit that like button. So we're starting out with our Callidus Assassin, and most of these Assassins are going to share a very similar profile line in that it's like movement 7, weapon and ballistic 2, strength and toughness 4, wounds 5, attacks 5, leadership 9, and like a 4+ invulnerable save. Now, the Callidus Assassin is an interesting one because when she does arrive from Deep Strike, she has the ability to just be set up d6 plus 3 away from the enemy models, potentially ending her just 4 inches away, and if that does happen, then you can use our Neuron Shredder, which is an Assault 1 9-inch weapon. When hit is scored, you roll 3 dice. If you outroll the enemy's leadership, you do 3 mortal wounds. She also has a Phase Sword, which is a -3 2 damage sword that ignores invulnerable saves. She also has Poison Blades, which she makes 1 additional attack with, and these automatically wound on a 3+ against non-vehicle units. And then she can also shoot and charge in a turn in which she fell back. And finally, Reign of Confusion is a really powerful ability that she has that in the first turn, the enemy player must essentially, on a roll of a 4+, every time you use a stratagem, must pay 1 additional CP to make that stratagem still occur. And if they don't pay that additional CP, then that stratagem has no effect and the current CP are actually lost. So an interesting character, definitely able to assassinate. I guess these are assassins, so assassinate like a Space Marine captain from full health in a single turn, fairly reliably, and we're going to go into maths and survivability throughout the slides, so stick around. Next up is our Vindicare Assassin, and the Vindicare is the sniper. He's a pistol and a rifle, and he also has like blind grenades. Now, both his rifle and pistol cannot take invulnerable saves against them. And what's interesting is he has 2 abilities called Deadshot, well actually 3, Deadshot, Faultless Aim and Headshot. Faultless Aim means if he remains still, he always hits on a 2+, even if he's shooting an enemy in cover that would normally, -1 to hit. Deadshot means that he can shoot targets that are normally protected from Lookout Sir. And in addition to Deadshot, if your wound roll is a 6, then the damage on the gun is changed from D3 to D6. And then Headshot is really interesting in that if you do make a wound and the enemy takes some damage, i.e. they fail their saving throw, then you roll a d6, and on a 3+, they take a mortal wound, you roll another d6, this time on a 4+, they take another mortal wound, and so on and so forth. So he has the potential to do like 10 wounds in a single turn. I mean, it's not reliable and it's crazy swingy, but it can happen. And then essentially, if you shoot anyone that is in cover, they also do not get any benefit from cover saves, and if the enemy try and shoot you, it's -1 to hit, and if you're on or in a terrain feature, it's -2 to hit. So a difficult assassin to take down, and one that is very swingy, but on a good lucky day can essentially assassinate again a character from very long range, 72-inch range on that rifle. Now, third up is our Culexus Assassin, and the Culexus Assassin is sort of an anti-psyker assassin, but like the main thing that she's got going for her is that it's -2 to psychic tests and deny the witch tests if she's within 18 inches of enemy psychers. Now, her normal gun is like Assault D6 if she's within 18 inches of the psychers, but normally it's just Assault D3. And it only does 1 damage. She does have a psychic grenade called a Psych Out grenade that can essentially do immortal wounds against psychers or demons again. And interestingly, she can shoot both the assault weapon and throw a grenade in a single turn, but she just doesn't feel like she does much damage. If she does get into combat, close combat, she has no close combat weapon, but what's interesting is that normal saving throws cannot be made against her close combat, only invulnerable saves. So, you know, Librarians, for example, in Space Marine armies don't have invulnerable saves typically, so if you're going to use her to make it difficult for the enemy to essentially cast powers with Librarians, and then you got into combat with her, the Librarians wouldn't get any save. So it seems like she could assassinate some Psychers, but overall against pretty much everything else she's kind of weak. She does have a really interesting rule in that when enemies try and hit her, their ballistic skill and weapon skill are modified on a 6+, which means like it just becomes very difficult for enemies to hit, you know. So she could tie up enemy models in combat as well, just because you're not going to reliably be hitting her all that often, in that you can only hit her on rolls of 6+. And then, you know, again, she's got that 4+ save. So, interesting anti-psyker, but doesn't feel like, to me anyway, that she has the same killing potential that some of the other two assassins that we just looked at were. And then our fourth and final assassin, sorry, is the Eversor Assassin. And this assassin, to me, feels like he's the most all-round assassin, right? He has additional attacks, 6 attacks and 6 wounds, and if he does charge, he gets 2 additional attacks. When he does go to do a charge, you roll 3d6, so if he arrives from deep strike, you have a much more reliable charge. If he dies, he explodes on a 4+ and does, well, on a 4+, he does d3 mortal wounds to enemy models only within d6 of him. He can also shoot at any enemies that fall back as if it were the shooting phase. He does have a pistol that's pretty decent, pistol 4, strength 4, -1, 1 damage, and you can reroll all the attacks made against infantry targets. He also has a neuro gauntlet, which is strength +1, -1, 1 damage, I guess like gauntlet, and again you can reroll all your wounds, so it's almost a little bit like the lightning claw, but rather than -2 it's -1 and +1 strength. So he's also equipped with a power sword if you feel like you don't need to reroll your wounds. He has a Melta-Bomb, which is essentially a 4-inch infernal pistol. It's just a grenade 1, strength 8, -4, d6. However, you can reroll attacks with this Melta-Bomb against vehicles. And then I think finally he's got an interesting rule called Killing Rampage, where like every unit he kills in close combat within an enemy squad grants 1 additional attack. Obviously the additional attacks that he gets from that do not grant more additional attacks, but you know, it can essentially, with his 8 attacks and his re-rolling on wounds and his weapon skill of 2+, you know, you can potentially see him getting boosted up a few extra attacks fairly easily. And he can also consolidate 6 inches instead of just 3. So he seems like more like an anti-infantry assassin, but he can do a little bit of everything. You know, like I said, he's well-rounded, a decent pistol, a decent close combat, and also Melta-Bombs. Right, so we're going to talk about shared stratagems first. And shared stratagems for the assassins are pretty interesting. Shadow assignment is one of them, and what it means is if you include any of these assassins in your army list, before the game starts you can pay 2 CP and you can swap them out for any of the other 3. So by including one, you essentially can include any of them. It's your choice. You obviously include the one that you think is going to synergize best with your list, but be prepared that you can spend 2 CP at any point to switch it out before the battle begins. And additionally, there's another stratagem called Priority Threat Neutralized for 0 CP, and what that will do is if you kill an enemy character with the assassin, you get 1 CP back, and if it is the enemy warlord, you would essentially get 2 CP back. This can be scored, you know, multiple times throughout the game, obviously just once per character though. So in survivability next, I always factor out the chance to hit. So basically once you've been hit, 20 bolt rifles will wound and you'll fail the save to kill you with the Culexus, the Vindicare, or the Callidus. Now it's important to note that both the Culexus and Vindicare have rules that make them harder to hit. The Culexus becomes only being hit on ballistic and weapon skill rolls of 6+. The Vindicare is -1 against ranged weapons and -2 if in a terrain feature. And then the Eversor, who is the most survivable and the most all-round, like I said before, he actually has a 1 CP stratagem that you pay at the start of the phase to essentially give him a 4+++, feel no pain roll throughout the phase, but not against mortal wounds. So there is ways to change up the survivability here a little bit. Now, there is also some stratagems that affect each of them, so we'll run through those real quick. The Vindicare can essentially pay 1 CP to shoot again at a different target, and if you get a sort of crazy proc roll on the shooting, that could be very strong, or you can shoot essentially mortal wounds against monsters and vehicles. The Callidus can become acrobatic, which means you can move, advance and charge in a turn and also become -1 to hit, or she can pay 2 CP to re-enable that Reign of Confusion, you know, costing the enemy more CP throughout the next turn on a roll of 4+, which can be pretty nasty. Our Eversor can use Stim Overload to fight twice, so you can potentially already get 8 attacks when he's charging, bonus attacks for every model he's killed, and then the ability to fight again. Seems pretty useful. However, on a roll of 1, 2 or 3 he takes a mortal wound, but he still gets to fight twice. And then the Culexus can essentially make her gun do D3 damage rather than 1 if she's within range of enemy psychers. It feels a little bit lackluster to me. Or for 2 CP she can make an enemy fight last. Now I've obviously been campaigning for people to use a whirlwind, and this is only 3 inches and it's 2 CP, so not the strongest, but I mean it could be situationally useful to you for sure. So let's jump on to look at actual damage. Now I've put the difficult targets on this list to see just how the assassins do, but I think we need to focus on the row where it's like a character with toughness 4, 3+ save, 4+ invulnerable save. And in orange here we have our Callidus Assassin, and she feels to me like against a Space Marine captain with that profile, she can pretty much almost kill him. 4.5 damage and then a 50-50 chance to do a couple of mortal wounds from her gun. You know, pretty decent. The sniper, the Vindicare, the actual damage that he does is pretty low. You're all just requiring on that swing from either a 6 on the wound roll or a 3+, 4+, 5+, and so on from the headshot mortal wounds. So I guess over the course of the turn, or over the course of the game, maybe the Vindicare is going to get like 1 good roll like that, but it's fairly low proc, and it's not something I would want to really rely on. If we move forward onto the Eversor next, and the Eversor in pink here, you know, his pistol is decent, his Neuro Gauntlet is decent as well, and obviously he has those melta-bombs that can re-roll against vehicles. He feels to me like the most all-round. He doesn't necessarily feel like a character assassin. He feels more like he's going to do well against taking out like toughness 4 infantry with like, you know, like a 3+ or a 4+ save. I mean, I think like against like Necron warriors, for example, he could kill a lot of warriors or something. But I mean, against the character here, he's going to do like 3 wounds. So I don't think he's overly strong against like enemy characters with invulnerable saves. And then our Psyker character, or our anti-Psyker Culexus, just doesn't do a lot of damage, period. It seems like it's a bit situational. One of our strengths, I suppose, is she can hold objectives on her own, because if the enemy try and shoot her on their weapon skill 6+, it's going to be pretty hard to hit her, and then she does hang on to that 4+ invulnerable save. I mean, the strength of the Culexus, I guess, is it makes it much harder for any enemies to successfully cast psychic powers, but in terms of doing damage back against the Psychers, it's pretty underwhelming. I didn't include a column here where like we just included our melee damage, and like it is interesting that you cannot take any normal saves against her melee damage, so there's something to be said there. But yeah, definitely useful against a psychic army. You know, if the enemy just has 1 Psyker, I don't think it's going to be worth picking her up, unless you want to try and have her hold an objective and make it difficult for the enemy to roll to hit and shoot her. So my overall thoughts on the Assassins are, you know, they're going to be best against those toughness 4 characters with just sort of a standard 4+ save. Like, think of a Space Marine captain, and yeah, I mean, it sounds like the Callidus is going to be the most reliable if that's the sort of character that you're going to just want to assassinate. You know, her phase sword with no invulnerable saves against it, and then the Reign of Confusion actually tied in with that, making it more expensive for the enemy to use CP, is pretty nice. So the Callidus feels like it could work quite well with a Blood Angel's army. The Eversor as well feels like he's a bit all round there. You know, like I always talk about harassing the opponent's backfield objective. I feel like the Eversor can do that fairly well against infantry. You know, you kill a whole infantry squad pretty reliably in 1 turn. You know, 4 pistol shots, then potentially 16 or more melee attacks, hitting on 2s, re-rolling their wounds. However, against characters, I mean, if you're happy to pay to fight twice, then I guess against characters you can probably do some work. But I guess the Callidus you wouldn't need to pay to fight twice, and the Callidus can also have that very short charge range, so it feels like there's maybe a little bit more reliability there. The Vindicare, it's so swingy for me, I just can't pick it. Like, I've looked at it before and I've thought it'd be really useful to take Lookout Sir to remove enemy models, but I try and avoid stuff that is swingy. Like, I guess the reason behind that is like, Warhammer is a dice game, but I never feel like I lose or win games based on dice rolls, right? And I guess you do that by taking things that give you sort of like weight of fire or reliable fire, and you take enough of them that it would average out over the course of the game. And I guess this guy to me just doesn't feel like that's an option. You know, it's just going to be basically like 4 or 5 shots throughout the game. Yeah, and it's so swingy. Like, you go through a game where he does nothing, you go through a game where he kills 2 characters in 2 shots. I don't like it. I can see why you could take it, but I feel like you're fishing, and like I never like to be rolling fishing for dice rolls. And then the Culexus against psychers, like a very psychic army. Maybe there's some strength to taking her, but she's not really going to do any damage. You know, she's going to potentially lock up an enemy unit in close combat because they're going to struggle to hit her on 6s. She can potentially make enemy psychers. She can make their lives a bit of a misery. If she gets into combat with them and they don't have an invulnerable save, she can actually kill them. But overall, she just seems very niche, and I think difficult for me to include in an army. So let me know down below which assassin you're going to include. Or are you going to just include one and pay for the 2 CP for the shadow operations to switch the assassin out? Now at the moment, most of you guys probably know I'm running a captain on a bike ×2, a librarian, and the sanguinary priest. And I think all of these characters, and I actually really want to find a way to get librarian dreadnought back in my list. I think all of these characters are super strong right now, and when I compare these assassins, I don't feel any of them are super strong. I feel like they're not bad. I feel like there's maybe some edge cases where they could be pretty useful, but not bad against super strong for me is kind of where I stand. So quite a lot of people on the channel had actually asked to see this video on the assassins. I'm happy to answer any comments you have below, and we can continue obviously in Discord and Facebook group. You can find the links in the video description. So a bit of a quick fire video because it was a lot to get through and I don't want the video to be 30 minutes. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully there's maybe make you think about some things and maybe reconsider some of the options you're taking. If you want to join us and support the channel now, there is a big join button right below this video on YouTube, so just click it whenever you check it out and you can check out some cool perks you can get for joining and becoming a member. So thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Hope to see you in the next one, brothers. By the blood are we made. Peace.